Welcome back to another episode of Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned. Today's conversation is for anyone who has ever felt stuck in the very life they once dreamed of. It's for the high achiever who has checked all the boxes but still feels disconnected. It's for the leader who knows there's more but doesn't know how to reach it without losing themselves in the process. Today, to guide us through this terrain, is Rachel Burr, an executive coach, leadership consultant, and transformation guide with over 20 years of experience in helping people navigate complexity, reconnect to their authentic core, and lead with clarity and heart. Rachel holds dual master's degrees in clinical psychology and organizational development, and she brings both soul and strategy to her work with high performing professionals. And we love that conversation around here. What I personally love about Rachel is her ability to blend powerful insights with real humanity. And yes, a good dose of humor too. Today's theme, From Stuck to Unstoppable, a practical guide to achieving real change. This conversation is going to help you breathe again, believe again, and most importantly, begin again. Let's dive in with Rachel. Oh, welcome, Rachel. So happy to have you here today. And you and I share a deep alignment in just the ways that we want to show up in the world and the support that we want to provide people. So excited to have you here from the Bay Shore area, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Laurie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so good. So what really I think brought us together is I love when we see the psychology and practicality of leadership sort of come together. And when we talk about leadership, I think you and I have that similar we're all leaders in whatever capacity is. So when we say that word, this is for everybody. Tell us a little bit about how your own journey shaped your desire to help others lead with this blend of psychology and practicality.
Well, I think I just lost my lights a little bit.
A little dim.
Yeah, little dim. It must be the energy we're generating. It's
We
like
just
too
sucked it
much.
all.
Suck it up. I think, and we'll talk about also the book in a little bit, but I think so much of us, many of us at some time feel like we're trying to find a path or we're being pushed on a path that someone else is is pushing us. I think finding our core of who we are as a fundamental piece of our journey is so important.
Mm,
And that's what I love doing, working with leaders. And I do come from a psychological background, so understanding how we work, but also from the organizational point about how we work together, how we work as a team,
mm,
and really being able to start with ourselves first as the core. I use the term a lot, cookie cutter, that leadership and life should not be a cookie cutter. But as leaders, a lot of times we see this, you know, idea or mold that we're supposed to push ourselves into. And it really leaves out some of the most important parts of who we are and being able as leaders to bring our full self to whatever challenge is in front of us. To me, that is fundamental to our success. And I want to help people do that.
mhm. I think it's you talk a lot about this leading from the inside out, which I think is that core piece that you talk about as well. But how does someone recognize they're disconnected from it? How do you help them get to that layer, get to that core layer? Share with us some of sort of how you get there with people.
Yes. I think some of the biggest symptoms or red flags are that we're stuck, something's not working,
Mm,
we can't see movement, we can't generate movement, we're maybe just generally miserable. All good red flags, right?
mhm,
So, starting with leaders, I think one with executive coaching especially, coming from the outside, you are really focused on the leader. So you're giving them that space to bounce around, be themselves, develop trust. It's not that you're part of the organization, not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's a confidentiality and there's kind of a
mhm,
safety in that sense of being able to take off a lot of the armor that all of us wear Really where I start with is trying to understand the individual values, talents, skills, ambitions. What do they want? Motivations,
Mm,
and helping them recognize they're already operating on all these things. We're already operating on all these things. So, how do we dig into what's really driving us? What's going on? What is the mindset? What are both the strengths, the blind spots, the weaknesses we're operating under? And once we understand what that looks like, and sure, we are a moving target a lot of times. There are core pieces that are really fundamental to us. How they show up may shift, but at least a starting point for the journey and understanding that I think is so fundamental because we can't change something that we don't see or that we don't
mhm,
understand. That has to be the starting point.
mhm. It's so true. When you are working with, like, in the executive coaching realm especially, do you, for the most part, when you meet with leaders, do you find that they do know those pieces, or are you maybe they haven't slowed down long enough? Are you creating the container where they at least have the opportunity to explore it? What are you really finding today? Because I'm really seeing like leadership is fundamentally lots of things are the same as they've always been. And yet there's been high stress in the last 5+ years in unique ways that we hadn't experienced before. So I'm just curious what you notice when you sort of meet them where they're at.
I think it's a continuum. We all exist on a continuum in terms of how insightful or aware or not we are. That could also be true in a given situation or on a given day. So I find that one of the things that does tend to happen in times of stress for all of us, it can trigger our more reactive tendencies. It triggers
Mm,
our stress. So while some people thrive in chaos, I tend to be one of them at some point as well. It also can throw us into not the best versions of ourselves.
yes.
We get and we the emotional trigger, they always talk about the amygdala hijack where your brain is flooded with emotions. It doesn't really open us up to being reflective, being able to step
Mhm.
back. We're really in that fight, flight, freeze sometimes, area. I think there are leaders who are very aware and very insightful. Doesn't mean that there aren't areas still for them to tap into. There are for all of us. None of us is completely objective about who we are. We're not even objective about other people. We've got our filters, our biases, and it's just the way it is.
We're
So working with that.
human.
Oh yeah, we're human.
Human.
By the way,
Darn.
we're human. Yeah. I think there are other leaders that and I think there's different reasons for this. I think some folks, they have so much armor on that they are, and it's very hard. Armor is clunky. So, I always think about the metal armor from, King Arthur's realm or whatever, and the huge swords. All of it's really heavy.
It's
So,
so heavy. It's
right?
so heavy.
So carrying that around does not give you a lot of, opportunity to redirect your energy into self-reflection. Uh,
Mhm.
One of the other things, and I use assessments, I use things like that for as tools for insight. I think sometimes people have gotten the wrong message. I
Mhm.
think sometimes they've gotten the message that these assessments are a box and they determine you, they determine your future. None of that is true. They are they are tools, they are the start of a conversation,
Mhm.
they are your opportunity to understand, how do you tend to see yourself? How do others tend to see you? And that's important because a lot of times we think, well, that's their perception and it's trite, it's their perception, is reality, etc. What I like to talk with leaders about is I don't meet people who want to be bad leaders. I've
Mm,
never met someone who started off to say, "Yep, I want to be a terrible leader." That's
right?
what I want.
I am really hoping I suck at
I am
this,
hoping I suck at
you
this
know?
because that
Yeah,
will be that's my end all. That's my purpose
for
in life
sure.
is to suck as a
My
leader.
legacy.
Absolutely. So I think one of the challenges is that we judge ourselves by our intent.
Mm,
Other people judge us by our impact on them. And so helping leaders also see the gap that is there, that it's not that you're bad or that you're because people like to say, "Oh, leaders should do this, leaders should do that." Well, leaders are people. That's last
mhm,
time I looked.
mhm,
Understanding that gap and saying, "Okay, what can we do to close that?
mhm,
What can we do to get people closer to your intent
mhm,
and their perception?" Because
mhm,
that's the kind of leader you want to be. And sometimes back to your insights, we may not recognize also the reactive tendencies we have or the derailers or other things. We may not recognize the things that are triggering us that are keeping us from really stepping into that best self.
mhm. That is so powerful because I'll often meet leaders who actually use that language of, "This is my intention," and then the perception that their intention is how the execution is happening. Or like how it's actually unfolding, and yet it always comes from the perception of those around us. So what a beautiful, like, closing that gap, deepening the awareness within what's creating the gap, what's the perception of you versus your actual intent.
Mm,
That is gold. We're going to highlight that quote. We need to call it something. Like, that gap has a special name. That's really powerful. Really powerful. I want people actually listening to sit with that one. Let that one sink in. I think all of us could use that in so many different ways. Wow.
mm,
And then I think, like, part of that intent of, like, our intention, the leader's intention, is that part of what can keep people stuck
mm.
in transformation if they have a belief around their intention and don't see the misalignment. Talk to us a little more about the what does stuck really mean? Where does it come from? How do we how do we come out of it? All of that.
Oh, that's a huge question, right?
Yeah, it is.
Let's break it down into some pieces. I'm a big fan of breaking down the big into
Mm,
some smaller chunks to be able to figure it out. First and foremost, I think what keeps us stuck is fear.
mm,
Fear of the unknown, fear that we're not enough or that we're not capable in order to jump into the unknown and handle the monsters and fantastic beasts that are out there. So we choose to stay where we are. One of the problems with that is, one, staying inside our comfort zone keeps us small. It doesn't allow us to even know what's possible, because one of the things that happens when we are challenged is that we really figure out the metal we're made of, and also what we're capable of, how we grow, and that's really important. The other thing that people will say is, "Well, I'm not gonna make a choice yet. I'll make a choice later about what I want to do or how I want to attack this." That's still a choice.
mhm,
Choosing to take action, choosing not to take action, we're fooling ourselves into thinking we're not taking or not making a choice. We are making a choice. We're choosing to stay stuck. So a lot of it is in this dialogue and what we tell ourselves.
mhm,
The other piece is what again, so many sayings, they're trite because they're true, that what got us here won't get us there.
mhm,
So a leader steps into a new situation. They step into a role that's larger and more complex. They realize, I don't know how to be successful here. I don't know how to have the impact. And some leaders are open and say, okay, I need help. I need skills. I need development. I need all of those things.
mhm,
Others really try to put up that front, that whole imposter syndrome piece, and so they want to look nice and shiny on the outside, but underneath, they have no idea what they're doing, and they tend to double down on what they've already been doing, even though it's not working. We tend to
mhm,
go back to what we know because it's comfortable, even if it's not effective.
mhm.
So, we're essentially just digging our hole deeper
Right.
as we go through.
Yeah.
So, I I think those are some of the key fundamentals that, maintain our stuckness, or however you wanna
Mm,
say it. I think
mhm,
there's different factors that are unique to each of us, but a lot of what's unique in situations doesn't mean that the fundamental root of the challenge is different, and it's important for us to know that we're not alone.
Mhm. And, so many, power thoughts in that. The one that's really jumping out for me is the choice.
Mm.
And so do you find that the stuckness in many ways comes from not owning or believing or understanding that you have a choice in every situation?
I I think it's 2 things. I absolutely think I hear, "Well, I don't have a choice." Well, okay.
Okay.
There's very few things we don't have a choice over. Even
Yes.
fundamentally, I love, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which
So
I'm
good.
sure has come up on your podcast a
So
million
good.
times because it's so crucial. And I'm always gonna butcher this quote, but the idea that they can take away everything from us, but not our ability to choose how we respond.
Yes.
Now, that is much easier said here in the safety of our conversation and, all the comfort of our armchair, as
Yes.
armchair quarterbacking here. So, but that is true. Now, sometimes what happens is we don't like the choices we have, and that's normal. So the question is today, if I don't like the choices I have, how do I make choices now that will get me to better choices?
Mm.
Because keeping ourselves in the delusion that we're not making a choice by not moving,
Mhm.
that's not helpful, and that won't get us to better choices.
Very well said. And that kinda taps into my next question, which is about resistance.
Mhm.
'Cause I think, this whole choice loop can then create the resistance that
Mm,
we often experience. So, one of the things that you work on is really unlocking that untapped potential in people,
mhm,
and that requires that we have this emotional and energetic connection as well, and that we live in the world that we're talking about, and yet there's especially I find, like, that 3 feet from gold almost, or that, like, you're just about to have the breakthrough and there's so much resistance that comes up. Play with us in that space.
Oh, resistance is so fun, and I talk or I use the example of as a metaphor, Campbell's The Hero's Journey, and, if
Mhm,
for those of you who haven't heard of it, Campbell is a writer and a philosopher and talks about the fact that while our journeys may be different, these great heroic journeys of Greek mythology and Grimm's fairy tales, all of it, Star Wars, has these kind of key phases or stages as we go through it. And
mhm,
throughout, resistance is such a key factor to anything we do as
mhm,
humans. Change in general, whether it is self inflicted, self introduced, or we want to change, or it's inflicted upon us.
mhm,
We resist. It is that we are stepping into an unknown. We are in that protection mode. We have the little gremlins or self-critics in our head. Everybody knows, I always say it's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. It's a dialogue with, with these characters. And
very
us
true, thank
oh,
you.
they are. It's like it's not a monologue. There are so many voices in here that, and different times they show up for different things. And ostensibly they're there to keep us safe. The
Mhm,
challenge is that it should be a conversation, first of all, if it's a safe, a two-way. We tend to listen more than we actually tend to give back or assess and, provide alternative interpretations. And a lot of times this safe is based on something that's very old. It might be something when we were kids, it might be something early in our career. And what kept us safe then is not applicable anymore. We're capable of so much more now. And when we listen to those critics and we allow that resistance to hold us back,
mm,
then we won't move forward. But what I love, and one of the quotes in the book is change happens when fear of the unknown is finally dwarfed by a looming dread of the same.
yes.
So once we resist against what's out there unknown until we're pushed forward by the fact that I don't want what I have now.
Mhm.
And so I'm open to the possibilities and the resistance lessons.
Feel that so deeply, like, when I think about the moments in my life where I've had the biggest transformations, it's when staying stuck where I was or in the experience I was having was just so much more painful than whatever was out there unknown. And, I'd love our listeners just to think of a moment where that was true for you and then just continue to understand that resistance is there actually to support us. Like that 3 feet from gold perspective is back in the gold rush times, they quit. 3 feet from
Mm,
gold, many people packed their stuff up and left, and the ones that went that 3 more feet were the ones that hit the gold rush and had all the gold with them, and that analogy in life and business is so true. Like, it's right there, we can almost see the finish line, and the resistance becomes stronger and stronger, and yet we can just, like, breathe deeply and move through that resistance and recognize it is there to keep us safe, and it's also, we've got inside of us what can keep us going, so I love that perspective. Okay, you wrote a book, a new book.
mm.
I wanna talk about the new book, Rachel. So, what I'm really finding is so many people are craving change and transformation, but they're also afraid and exhausted with how much change, unknown change we've experienced in, the last 5 years, as I said earlier. So, I'd love to hear your take on sustainable transformation, first of all. Not the kind that burns us out, but kinda anchors us in, and I think that aligns deeply with your book. So tell us all the good stuff about the book and transformation.
Love it. Well, first of all, I have it here just in
Let's see
case.
it.
So it's Butterfly Goo, the down and dirty truth of transformation. I start with this. I probably should explain the cover for those folks who
Please
don't
do.
know about butterflies. So my brother's an entomologist, so he's helped me with this, but
Fun.
yeah, because we talk about the cocoon, etcetera, although he does inform me that cocoons technically are for moths and a chrysalis is for a butterfly, and I'm like,
Oh,
"Yeah," it's like, but that's not the image that's gonna resonate, so even
sure.
though he thinks moths are much cooler, but that's okay. So
Brothers.
I know. So, I've always resonated with the butterfly. I think a lot of us do. It's this, very common, almost ideal image of transformation. And it is beauty. It is that we look for, and that also distracts us from the reality of what goes in to transformation, what is an arduous journey often. So the little caterpillar starts to spin its cocoon, and in that cocoon, it literally dissolves into a gelatinous goo. And from that goo, it takes its fundamental building blocks and it builds something new.
Mm,
What's important about that, even at this point, is that the caterpillar does not take anything, does not need anything else than what it takes into that cocoon to become a butterfly. It was already inside of it. It's just
mhm,
creating the best version of itself. People think that when the butterfly emerges, that that's the transformation. It's not. That's the result of the transformation. And even at the end, what's really funny is as the butterfly emerges from the cocoon, if it doesn't have to struggle on the way out, its wings won't be strong enough to fly. That struggle, that resistance, that hard work is so important. It's in fact, it's critical to the actual transformation, and while we would all like to have smooth roads with clear signage and your path is this way, that is not how we transform, and my goal with this also is to dispel the myth that transformation is what you see curated on social media or that it's easy or that it's magic because it's very discouraging because we start to think, "Well, I can't do that. That happened overnight to them."
mhm,
Does not happen overnight.
mhm,
So, helping people understand the reality of transformation, both the butterfly as an analogy and for us, makes it more accessible. If we can break it down and make it actionable, then we can see ourselves transforming and moving into the best of who we can be and the life we really want.
Mhm.
So that was really the impetus for the book.
Ooh, okay, there's so many places we could go here. So, I'm curious. I have never heard it described that way to me. I have heard it described as the cocoon is hard, like, that's not easy to be inside of there, and it's not easy when they come out, but I've never heard the goo part, that they're in goo, and what they take in is all they needed. That is so magical. So, why don't we talk more about that? Why do we just
Oh,
want to look at the beautiful butterfly and take it through the lens transformation stories on social media, same thing. Why do we just want to look at that endpoint and beat ourselves up?
because nobody wants to share their mess.
Mhm,
Nobody wants the vulnerability of it. Nobody wants to put out there that they're not perfect, that it wasn't easy, that they struggled. They watch other people projecting this easy, perfect transformation. They don't want to admit that, oh my gosh, it's just me. I'm an imposter. Clearly, they know what they're doing, which, of course, isn't true. So, sharing the mess is so important because it's not about discouraging us from our transformation. It's not about discouraging us from our journey. It's helping people understand what they're experiencing when they encounter it. So
mm,
when you go through the goo and you're slogging and you're struggling, instead of thinking, "Oh, I must be doing this wrong. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough, smart enough, any of it." Instead thinking, "Yep, this is what I expected. Well, let's strap on the hip waders and slog through this goo so we can get where we're going."
mhm,
It's important to understand that because setting up this artificial perfection is unattainable for anybody.
mhm, mhm. Or even, I think, wanting someone to remove it.
Mhm.
Wanting to
Yes,
find the solution that will take away the suffering, will take away the struggle, will take away the goo, instead of just being in such gratitude of this season will then allow, my wings to flourish, my wings to be so beautiful.
yeah,
And I don't feel like we do that either. We've got all these quick fixes for the mess as well.
I
So
agree.
how do we shift the perspective on that?
I think one of the pieces is to your point, there is no magic, quick fix, panacea,
Mhm.
whatever. And even things that look like a quick fix have consequences. We may
Yes.
not know what they are, but just know that it's never as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have is sitting in the goo. It's
Mm,
allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable. It's one of the things before we even step into the unknown that keeps us stuck. We are really good at getting comfortable in our discomfort.
mm,
So we're uncomfortable, but it's an uncomfortableness that we know that it's not
yes.
scary because we already know how to deal with it. Learning to sit in the discomfort, learning to say, "This sucks. I don't wanna do this."
Mhm.
And then thinking about, okay, what is going on? Back to your self-reflection. What's happening? What is it that I want? What is it that's, getting in my way, keeping me stuck? And by the way, most of the time, that's us.
Mhm.
So really being able to sit with that, which takes time and allows to just be as opposed to trying to control and push it in a particular direction. We're not
Mhm.
so good at tolerating that. And our tolerance may actually be going down with the way our society, culture, the world is
Mhm.
changing, where I'm not going to say they, because we are part of this. We want the quick fix. We don't
Yes.
want the journey. We want the easy answer. And the easy answer, first of all, isn't that easy. And
Mhm.
second, it's not the answer.
Mm, that's so good. I think too is we've seen the model of tell unfortunately, this is what's popping up for me, is the model of "let me be vulnerable with you" has almost been used to as a sales methodology. versus I don't know why that came up for me, but it's what came up. And I love sales, sales leader in the past, have lots of admiration for the sales career. But like I look at the speaking model and the coaching model in many ways has been used. I will be vulnerable so that I can show you that the framework I'm about to sell you is going to fix the challenge that you're sitting in. And so I know myself even in because we're in this world, sometimes I am so happy to be vulnerable. I will share anything that I can share that I have experienced that can help someone. I will share it. And then I find I'll resist a little bit because I don't ever want anyone to feel like I'm only doing it from that lens. Yeah.
I think too, I think yes, and I think there are so many interpretations of vulnerability, and like anything, it's like power. Power is not good or bad, it's how we use it.
Mm,
Vulnerability is not good or bad, it's how we use it.
mm.
I think one of the challenges becomes not so much even being vulnerable with others, but being vulnerable with ourselves.
Ooh, thank you.
Being first open to admitting what is it that's happening? What are the gremlins telling us? What
Mhm,
are the pieces that we're allowing to keep us stuck? What is our goo? And it's easy to I don't say it's easy. It's not easy to be vulnerable with other people. And there are people we shouldn't be vulnerable with. Just,
mhm.
it's it's not a
Mm,
like, oh, everybody has earned our trust.
no.
Everybody no, that's not true. But
And there's certain things nobody ever needs to know
no, there's a
about how ugly your goo is.
that's the whole TMI, too much
Yes.
information. And I think sometimes we substitute being vulnerable with others in terms of saying, I want to help you. I want, I'm telling you my story so that, you too can learn from it. And that's wonderful. And sometimes that's a substitute for us really sitting with it ourselves and being open internally because we feel like we're doing something. We feel like we're being vulnerable.
Mhm.
But have we really been vulnerable with ourselves? And a lot of times the answer is no.
This is so true and so enlightening to recognize it is that peace with ourself that is the hardest. It is so yucky, like, it's the goo. It feels terrible.
It
It almost
does.
feels like you can't even it's almost like that quicksand or the cement you got stuck in and you cannot pull yourself out of it in those moments, and then it's so much easier to run towards something else that you think is going to solve it versus sitting in it.
Yeah,
That's something
definitely
I
run away
really
from
think
it.
yeah, I think in the last decade or more that it's been a part of my journey is just it doesn't feel good, and I'm gonna sit here and we're going to figure out what that old identity is trying to teach me and
Mhm,
where I'm meant to go from here to step into a new version. And
mhm.
even recently, I had a trip to Bali, took a group of women to Bali for a retreat and came home and my husband kept saying, like, "You're really quiet. Everything okay?" And this went on for weeks and I said, when you do something like that, you have such a transformation and I experienced different parts of me that I hadn't experienced before. And so I just my quiet is just there's something evolving in me, but I don't know what it is. And it
Mhm.
doesn't feel great. There were parts of it that felt great and there were parts that were just kind of confusing. And so just kind of still navigating that a little bit and being in it, and it's okay, but it doesn't feel great.
No, and I honor you for being able to be open to that, not feeling like, "Okay, I have to label this so I can push it, go
Mm,
forward, move it out of the way."
mhm,
And it is, but that's the generative
mm,
piece of it, that when we sit in that and we don't try to force it in our own time or label it to make the discomfort go away, just to
mhm.
make it go away, then we're not serving ourselves, and it sounds like you are in the goo, and it's generative.
Yeah, for sure, it is generative, I love that word. And do you find, though, that we more often need the label? Is that something that we get so stuck, especially I'm thinking of, like, high achieving leaders, like, "I must label this so that
I
we can fix it."
I think we do all sorts of things to delude ourselves into the idea that we have control over everything, control over anything. I don't so there are pieces obviously that we choose. The idea of control is so seductive. And
Mhm,
when we release that and allow and I'm not saying being blown around by the wind and allowing us to, just go every which way, but be open to your point about, the things that are telling us to go this way or not go this way. And I have been an expert at swatting away the red flags and ignoring what I call the clicks, meaning like a combination lock that the lock doesn't just spring open, that you've got the clicks of the combination that go into it.
mhm,
And listening to the red flags, listening to the clicks, listening to your intuition, to your gut.
mhm,
What is all of that telling you? And just listening. We're not good at
mm,
listening to others. We're not good at listening to ourselves.
mhm.
Listening.
Yeah, which is all part of the emotional intelligence, which you work with leaders about. How do you walk them towards that journey? Like, what does emotional intelligence mean from your perspective, and how do you walk people there?
There's two aspects. Well, there's four technically, the way they talk about emotional intelligence. But first and foremost is recognizing what are we going through? What is showing up in our situation with ourselves, with others? If we're not aware of something or if we're unconscious of it, we can't take action
Mhm.
on it or we can't take action that's meaningful or that's going to serve it in a specific way. We might get lucky. We just take action.
Which is cool.
So don't get me wrong. A lot of life is actually luck. We don't like to say that because that's not control, but it is.
Right.
So I think first recognizing where we are, what is our emotional response to that? What is triggering that? And I will go back to cognitive psychology, even, Viktor Frankl. The reaction and the response are not the same thing.
Mm,
Becoming aware that there is that gap, and sometimes that gap is very, very tiny.
mhm,
And sometimes as we work with it, we can grow that gap so that we have more space between reaction and response. Our
mm,
body is responding in a particular way. We have very old hardware, software up there, but that doesn't mean the response is going to mirror the reaction. We
mhm,
have to be able to understand what's happening in our environment. We have to be able to adapt, especially now, adapt more quickly so that
mhm,
we can choose our response as much in a conscious process as we can. And we do the same with ourselves.
mm,
When we have that experience, I mean, how many of us sit with the inner critic and just beat the crap out of ourselves? How that's a response, but then it's a
mhm,
response turned inward.
mhm,
And recognizing a lot of times leaders focus on what I'm doing out in the world, how I'm engaging with people. Yes. And back to the core of who we are. How are you engaging with yourself?
mm,
What are you telling yourself? How are you staying aware of what's happening? And how are you choosing what to do with that for you?
mhm. I think that self-awareness, self-trust piece is obviously such an important part of the puzzle, and I feel like sometimes people hear those words and they know and they understand, they comprehend. How do they well, like, what's one step if someone isn't feeling that deep connection to self that they can take from your perspective to start leaning into that experience?
One of the things that I think has been helpful, and I've heard other people say that maybe it's one of the most helpful things you can do besides self-reflection or meditation or all of these things. I don't have the research, so don't take that for what I say. Go out, check it for yourself. But especially for those of us who are really action oriented, we want to go out, we want to do something, we want to have an impact. It seems simple, but the idea of journaling is
Mhm,
actually really helpful. And just asking yourself a few self-reflective questions.
Mhm.
What's going on with me now? What am I thinking? And just getting it out of your head and on to paper. One of the things I'll even tell clients as we're talking is, when you share with me, I will share with you my version of the truth. I never say it is the truth because,
Mm,
again, we're all biased. You can argue with me. You can tell me that that's not how you feel. Great. At least it's on the table. If you keep it in your head, I can't help you.
mm,
And when we keep it in our head, especially we tend to keep in our head the stuff that we're embarrassed by, ashamed of, that we don't want to admit. Oh,
mhm,
the gremlins love that because all of that stuff festers and it grows in the
mhm,
darkness. And when you bring it into the light, then there's the opportunity to actually say, wait a minute, is this what I really think? Is this what I'm telling myself? So even as a first start, if you're somebody who's action oriented, take 5, 10 minutes and just write out whatever's going on in your head. Emotion is data. A lot of times I'll work with folks in leadership and they say, well, emotion isn't important. Oh, okay. If you want to, ignore thousands of years of what's worked for us, then go for it. It's not that because I feel this emotion, I do X. It's like reaction and response. It's that something is happening and I need to understand what that is. My subconscious, my intuition, my gut, whatever is telling me something. So let's invite that to a conversation with my cognitive processing.
mm,
And so being able to recognize that emotional trigger, sometimes that's a great time to sit and write something out. What's going on with me? What am I feeling? And nobody has to see that but you. Even when you're done, put it through a shutter. It's not like anybody's going to find it where, on the in the movies and TV, we always see someone's passed away and someone's going through their diary, and it's like,
right.
"Don't do that." So, but it's the process of getting it out. It's not an archive. I mean, if you want to, great, but just get it out. See what happens when you take it out of your head and you put it in a different light where you can actually reflect on it.
Mm. What a beautiful invitation to everybody listening to explore that for yourself. And I love how you said too, it can be the questions. Like often when I grab my journal, I'm asking more questions than I might even be answering.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We're all different, right? It's whatever you're processing to be able to have a lens to explore. It's really getting us into that curiosity and possibility place which we don't all necessarily spend a lot of time in and is so vital. So just love that. I have a couple of like rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
I feel like we're gonna have to have 2.0 here, Rachel. Um, do you have a morning ritual that you swear by?
Do I
Or
have a
a
morning
daily
ritual that I
ritual?
say?
Maybe it doesn't have to be morning, more daily ritual.
Well, my morning ritual is supposed to be that I get up at 5 o'clock and I go to the gym. And there are days that I do that, and it helps to have a coach there because someone's expecting me to show up. So I recognize that maybe that's not my strength and I need help.
I love that because that's, like, the same as the work you do with people is, like, we're sitting there accountable and they come, and so therefore you help them transform.
Oh, absolutely. Otherwise, it's the cobbler's kids that have no shoes kind of a thing.
Yes.
It's Yeah, I always tell people, I am not coming at any of this from a pedestal. I am not coming at this from an academic or, an elite perspective. That's my whole book. This is a
Mm,
humorous memoir with some self-help-ish aspects to it.
amazing.
I am in the goo with you right there. And who better to reach back and, lend you a hand than someone who's in it, been through it, been there, done that, etc.
So true.
I think it's funny. One of my morning rituals, which I don't know if this has anything to do with, transformation itself. Obviously, everything probably does. But I have these little brain games on my app. And one, I think it's always important to kind of keep our mental agility going. And my dad has Parkinson's.
Mhm,
And so I recognize that in the world. It doesn't mean that I'm going to, doesn't even mean that I can do anything specific to stop it. But kind of doing these mental agility pieces, one, I think it engages me. I think it's fun. Um, and I do think it helps me keep my brain as fit as that supposedly going to the 5 o'clock in the morning gym thing does, although I'm far more motivated to do the brain games.
yeah. I love that. My aunt is, she just turned 89 years old, and every time I see her, I take her a new Sudoku she wouldn't do anything on on a phone, but I take her a new Sudoku book, and she does the crossword puzzles in the paper every day, and her brain is sharp as a tack, so I think that, we need to do those. I actually think in today's society, I say this to my husband often, we do such a good job of telling people you need movement, the gym. We don't actually talk about the brain a lot, and yet I think they're equally important to keep the brain active and the body active. So, you talk about like we share a love of books. And
Mhm.
so I don't know if you could answer this, but is there one book that really stands out as changed your life dramatically?
Yes, and it is
Okay.
gonna be an interesting book. It is not a business book or a transformational book itself. It is called Let's Pretend This Never Happened, a
Ooh.
mostly true memoir by Jenny Lawson.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely. So she is, again, very vulnerable. She's so funny. She's very sarcastic. She's just very open. She's got a lot of challenges in her life. She talks about challenges with mental illness and a lot of things going on for her. But she's funny and she's raw. And I read this book and I realized that when I wanted to go and write, I had this idea of what I was supposed to do. And by the way, anytime you say I should do this or I'm supposed to do that, that's a red flag because you're trying to convince yourself of something. So figure out what it is you're trying to convince yourself of and if it's something you really want or something society or somebody else is telling you you want. So I thought I was supposed to write a business book, or I thought I was supposed to write a coaching book, or I supposed to and then even then I came out of, in an academic environment, a lot of times we write in this very formal, even passive voice. And I really think that needs to shift because I I think more
Mhm.
people would actually read journal articles if they were interesting to
Mhm.
people outside of academia. Anyway, so
Yes, they would.
it would at one point, and I have no idea for all of you who are academics out there if the stat is still true, but it said the median, so the mean being the average, the median being kind of physically the average without the skew. The median number of people to read any given journal article is 0. The person who wrote it and the peer review, board that had to read it, but
Oh, that's not good.
no, and, that may be old, but honestly, I think still an example, it works, it's
Yeah.
true. So reading her, I thought, "I can bring my humor, I can bring my voice," and that's so important because and that's the other piece of it is a lot of folks who've talked to me about writing a book, first of all, they're like, "Oh, that's so vulnerable. How do you do you feel vulnerable?" And after the 3rd person said it, I'm like, "Well, I didn't, but now
Now
I'm
I
wondering if I
do.
should." But, people will say, "Well, what do I have to say that other people haven't already said?" And in the realm of human history, probably nothing. That's not the point. The point is you bring your voice. We bring our voice. We bring our unique perspective that tells our story, our perception of the world. And that voice and that perception may speak differently to different people. There may be people out there that have never thought about transformation, that have never thought they're capable of change. And if my voice, to quote an Emerson poem, that if even one life breathes easier because I have lived, that is to have succeeded. If even one person goes out and reads this and they say, oh my gosh, I see myself in this.
Mhm.
I can do this. I get it now.
Mhm.
That to me would be success. And that's what I got from Jenny Lawson's book that I can use my voice, my humor to reach others and to tell my story.
Mm, that is so powerful, and now I have 2 new books to read, hers and yours, and I can't wait. It's gonna put me in more goo, though, I can just see it. I know I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna have to do more goo, and that's okay because that is what we're here for. I love to ask people what ambitious, awakened, and aligned means to them. So what would that mean to you?
Ambitious for me is Acknowledging what I truly want, not playing
Mm.
small, but they talk about the BHAGs, right? The big, hairy, audacious goals. What is that for you? What is that I talk in the book about, what is the goal when you say it out loud, it is gonna make your gremlins just crap their pants. Like, if I put out there, like, "I wanna sell 1,000,000 books," that is
Yes.
scary, that is it feels untenable, why would I put that out in the world? But to me, that's ambitious. The awakened piece is, all right, well, first of all, that I've allowed myself to do this. Maybe it's the awakened and the ambitious kind of juxtaposed or reversed. But the awakened piece about, okay, how do I explore that? What does that mean? How do I start to break it down into its component parts? I go back to the goo that the caterpillar is dissolving its larval form, that first step into the components. How do I take those building blocks and build something new, build what I want? And then the aligned piece is going back to whatever I'm building, because we talk about, I want to find my path. We don't find our path. We build it. We may hear those clicks and we may hear the red flags and we feel the pull towards what excites and scares us, that intersection. But we have to be aligned with who we are, going back to the shoulds or I'm supposed to. Is this you? Is this aligned with who you are and what you want and what you feel your purpose is? Are you being pulled because someone else tells you that you should do this? Which, by the way, that's about their journey, their path, their learning process. So, ambitious. What is my biggest, scariest goal that really is at that intersection of what excites and scares me?
Mm.
Am I awakened? Like, what does that mean for me? How do I do that? How do I acknowledge that? How do I step into the goo that is going to be required? And is it aligned? Am I doing this because it is aligned with my core and who I am and what I want, as opposed to being pulled by other people's expectations?
Oh, that was so good. I feel like I have to record that and put it on every podcast. Oh, this was such a powerful conversation, Rachel. So enlightening, so many ahas, so many great quotes and insights. And yeah, I think we just want to encourage our listeners to grab your book, learn more about yourself and how you can transform through stepping into the goo, like being an allowance of the goo. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Lori. This has been so much fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Rachel, thank you. Thank you for showing us the sacred path from stuck to unstoppable. One that doesn't demand we be fearless, but truly invites us to walk forward even while we experience fear. Your wisdom reminds us that transformation isn't reserved for the extraordinary. It's the birthright of anyone brave enough to get honest, get clear, and get moving. To everyone listening, you are not broken, you are becoming. And as Rachel so beautifully shared, the key is already inside of you. You don't need to have it all figured out. Just begin. Start where you are with what you know, and who you are becoming will meet you there. For more of Rachel's brilliance, visit catamentum.com, catamentum.com, or follow her at Catamentum on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. All the links are in the show notes. And if this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their next chapter is still possible. Until next time, keep rising, keep remembering who you are, and stay ambitious, awakened, and aligned.